Peaceful protest calling for more transparency in the Nolan Wells investigation was held Saturday evening in Mississippi. The parents are seeking answers about what led to the death of their son. Wells' body was found after a 4th of July boat trip with friends to Horn Island in Mississippi. The death has sparked speculation after his friends returned from the trip without him. Patrick Wright reports.
I feel like today's testament is that we want answers. It's not about vengeance. It's not about accusations. It's about the truth, and it's about transparency.
You need to hear this. A former judge just said he already knows who should be arrested. Not for murder. For something you probably didn't expect. A phone. Nolan Wells went on a boat trip to Horn Island for the 4th of July. His friends came back. He didn't. That's it. That's the sentence that started all of this. Here's Promise 1. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what a former judge says is sitting in plain sight, unpunished, right now. Here's Promise 2. You'll hear what hundreds of people in Mississippi did about it, in their own words, this weekend. Because this isn't just a legal story. This is a mother asking a crowd to stay peaceful. This is a 19-year-old showing up because he refuses to let a name get forgotten. This is a man who watched Nolan grow up, standing on a street corner, still calling him sir. You're going to meet these people. You're going to hear what they saw. And you're going to hear a former judge lay out, piece by piece, why he believes an arrest should have already happened. If you've ever felt like a case moved too slow while the truth sat right there, comment "I see it" below, because you're about to see exactly what he means. This case has autopsy results still pending. It has a video everyone's talking about, and it has a legal argument most people online haven't heard yet. Let's start where it actually started. On an island, on a boat, on a day that was supposed to be a celebration. But before you get to what the judge is accusing anyone of, you need to see what actually happened on that island, and who came back without him. Evidence, picture it. July 4th. A group of friends, a boat ride out to Horn Island, off the Mississippi coast. Nolan Wells was on that boat. He didn't come back on it. His body was found after that trip. And almost immediately, people started asking questions, because his friends returned without him. The day before, hundreds gathered to demand answers. Nolan's mother, Christine, stood in front of cameras herself.
I'm of Emmett Till. And my family is here in support of what's going on because this young man should not be dead.
Because Nolan Wells is not the only one. There has been a long historic string of young black men losing their life under.
Delivered. The Jackson County coroner confirmed the physical exam on Nolan's body was already complete, and at that stage, investigators said they found no signs of foul play. Sounds like an answer, right? It's not. A preliminary exam can rule out the obvious: gunshots, stab wounds, severe trauma. It cannot rule out what toxicology finds. It cannot rule out what a full, final autopsy uncovers. That autopsy still isn't finished. Neither is the independent one the family requested. So you have a family standing in front of cameras asking for calm. You have a coroner saying nothing obvious yet. And you have an entire community that doesn't believe nothing obvious is the same thing as nothing happened. That gap between what's confirmed and what's still unknown, that's exactly where this story gets complicated. Because while families waited and communities gathered, one man who used to sign warrants for a living was watching too. And he says the system already missed something. That gap between what a preliminary look can rule out and what it can't is exactly where a former judge says the real questions are being ignored. Meet Carlos Moore, 6 years on the bench in Mississippi. Nearly 25 years practicing law, he's signed search warrants and arrest warrants himself, in more than one jurisdiction. He says he was eventually pushed off that bench for speaking out against racial discrimination, while he was still a sitting judge. That's not a side note. That's exactly why his voice carries weight here. Moore didn't wait for permission to speak. He went on Facebook for over 30 minutes and laid out his argument, piece by piece. Here's Promise 2, delivered. Moore's sharpest claim isn't about how Nolan died. It's about a phone. A video circulated. A voice widely believed to be Nolan's can reportedly be heard demanding his phone back. If that's true, And if someone kept that phone without his permission, Moore says that's theft. If that affidavit had come across my desk, Moore said, I would have signed the warrant. That's the whole argument. Nothing more complicated than that. Here's what he says should already exist. 5 things, right now, this week. He says search warrants should already be filed with a judge. Subpoenas should already be out for the friends' social media accounts. These shouldn't be casual conversations anymore. They should be formal interviews, on record. There should be a clear evidence timeline, written down, not just talked about. And the 5th one? That's the one Moore cares about most. He says the sheriff's office should have said, too early to tell, not no foul play. That one word choice, he says, changes how seriously the public takes this whole case. He's not saying he knows what happened to Nolan. He's saying a smaller, provable case is sitting right in front of investigators untouched. If this is true, why hasn't a theft charge already been filed? Tell us what you'd do if you were the judge. But the phone wasn't the only thing Moore says should already be under a microscope. The phone wasn't the only thing Moore says should already be under a microscope. Suspect Truth Moore didn't stop at the phone. He laid out a pattern, and he said the pattern alone changes how these friends should be treated. They had breakfast together the next morning, he says, instead of searching. Their social media accounts got deleted or deactivated. One of them reportedly couldn't find his car keys, then suddenly could. And lawyers got involved before Nolan's body was even recovered. Individually, none of that proves anything. Together, Moore says, it's enough to stop calling these young men persons of interest and start calling them something more. If a pattern like that would make you suspicious too, hit subscribe now, because you don't want to miss what happens if these autopsy results confirm what people already fear. Here's the part you need to hold on to carefully. Moore also raised a question about someone connected to this case, someone who reportedly went out to the island herself. He used a word here, accessory, but he framed it as his own suspicion, not a fact. We're not naming her. That accusation hasn't been proven. It's a question, not a charge. And Moore himself says the biggest charges, the ones people really want answered, have to wait. He wants both autopsies finished first. He wants bruising, injury, and toxicology results before anyone talks about murder. So you have a former judge saying smaller charges are ready now, bigger ones aren't ready yet, and the truth is still locked inside lab results nobody's seen. Is a pattern like this enough to call someone a suspect, or is that still too far? Say what you'd want to see first. Moore says he's not rushing to judgment, but he also says nearly a week is a long time to wait on paperwork that should already exist. If a former judge, someone who's signed hundreds of these warrants himself, still says wait, you know exactly how much weight those 2 pending autopsies are carrying. Unresolved close. Hundreds of people stood on a street corner in Ocean Springs this weekend. They didn't come for vengeance. They came to say one name and ask one question. What actually happened to Nolan Wells? A former judge stood behind a camera and said the same thing, in his own words, with decades of experience behind him. The pace of this investigation doesn't match its seriousness. Neither side has proof of what happened on that island. What they both have is patience running out. 2 autopsies are still pending. The state's and the independent one the family requested. Moore says those results are the single most important piece still missing. Until then, the phone, the pattern, the questions, all of it stays exactly where it belongs. Serious, unproven, still open. We don't guess. We wait for facts, and we bring them to you the second they're confirmed. Do you think the phone alone is enough for an arrest? Tell us below. We're reading every comment on this one. If you want to be here the second those autopsy results drop, subscribe now and turn on notifications. This case isn't over, and you're not going to want to find out what happens next from someone else.